She was ice, he was fire. Together, they commanded empires built on rivalry and ambition. But what happens when their Cold War heats up in a way no one expected? Watch as two billionaire adversaries, sworn enemies in the boardroom, navigate the treacherous waters of undeniable attraction, forcing them to confront a choice that could either ignite an unparalleled passion or completely dismantle their powerful lives. Welcome to Maya's Romance Tales. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for your support. The financial district of Manhattan never slept, but at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, even its relentless pulse seemed to slow. In the 73rd floor of the Obsidian Tower that bore her name, Evelyn Reed stood before her luxury windows, her reflection a ghost against the glittering cityscape below. She held a tumbler of whiskey she hadn't touched, her arctic blue eyes scanning the digital ticker streaming across her tablet, a cascade of numbers that would mean nothing to most people but represented kingdoms rising and falling to her. At 34, Evelyn had built Reed Technologies into an empire that made competitors desperate. Forbes called her the Ice Queen of Silicon Alley. TechCrunch had once run a profile titled "The Woman Who Taught Machines to Think, and Forgot How to Feel." She never bothered to correct them. The truth was far simpler. Feeling was a luxury she'd abandoned the day her father's company had been torn apart by vultures in tailored suits. She'd been 19, watching from the gallery as shareholders voted to dissolve everything Richard Reed had built. The memory still burned with crystalline clarity, not the loss itself, but the weakness that had caused it. Her father had been brilliant but soft, trusting where he should have been ruthless. Evelyn had learned. She had studied computer science at MIT while simultaneously earning an MBA, sleeping 4 hours a night, building the foundation of what would become her empire. By 25, she'd launched her first AI platform. By 28, she'd acquired her first competitor. By 30, she'd made her first billion. Now, Reed Technologies held 47 patents in machine learning architecture, employed 12,000 people across 6 continents, and had a market valuation that fluctuated between $45 and $50 billion depending on which analyst you asked. And she trusted absolutely no one. Her phone rang. Vincent Corr, her chief operating officer and one of the few people whose calls she answered after midnight. "The Thorn situation," Vincent said without preamble. "It's worse than we thought." Evelyn's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "How much worse?" "He's not just targeting our healthcare division. According to our source at the Patent Office, Thorn Industries filed 17 new applications last week. Evelyn, he's building a parallel infrastructure. If even half of these get approved." "They won't." Her voice could have frosted the windows. "Send me everything. I want his filing strategy, his R&D budget allocation, and a full analysis of his development team's LinkedIn profiles by morning briefing. It's already in your secure folder." "But Evelyn," Vincent hesitated, which was unlike him. "His approach is different this time. More aggressive. It's personal. It's always personal with Alexander Thorn." She finally took a sip of the whiskey, letting it burn down her throat. "He just hides it better behind that smile." 3,000 miles away, in a converted warehouse in Seattle that served as the heart of Thorn Industries, Alexander Thorn was very much not smiling. "Explain to me," he said with dangerous calm, addressing the 6 people gathered around the conference table at 3 a.m. Pacific Time, "how Reed Technologies knew about our procurement strategy before we'd even finalized the supplier contracts." Silence. Alexander, Alex to his friends, though he kept that circle deliberately small, leaned back in his chair. At 36, he looked like he'd walked off a magazine cover, dark hair perpetually tousled in a way that seemed effortless but probably wasn't, green eyes that could shift from charming to calculating in a heartbeat, and the kind of smile that had convinced countless investors to sign checks with more zeros than they'd initially intended. But there was nothing charming about him now. "Someone talk," he said quietly, "or I'm going to start assuming the worst about each of you, and trust me, my imagination is very creative. Jennifer Wu, his head of security, spoke up. We've swept for electronic surveillance 3 times. Nothing. But, she slid a tablet across the table. Reed Technologies hired 2 of our former supply chain analysts last month. Both had access to preliminary vendor discussions. Alex's expression didn't change, but everyone in the room had worked with him long enough to recognize the stillness that preceded a storm. Names: David Kowalski and Sarah Kaur. They're both now in Reed's procurement division. Significant salary increases, equity packages, the works. Alex stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Seattle at night lacked Manhattan's aggressive glamour, but it had something else, a frontier quality, a sense of possibility that had drawn him here a decade ago when Thorne Industries had been nothing more than an idea and a dangerous amount of venture capital. He'd built his empire on disruption. While Evelyn Reed had focused on perfecting AI architectures, Alex had pursued practical applications, AI that could revolutionize healthcare diagnostics, optimize renewable energy grids, transform educational accessibility. His company was valued at $38 billion, and unlike Reed Technologies' cold efficiency, Thorne Industries had a reputation for innovation with heart. The media loved the contrast. Wired had called him Tech's Philosopher King. Fast Company dubbed him the Disruptor with a Conscience. What the media didn't see was the steel beneath the charm. Alex hadn't built his empire through kindness. He'd built it through calculated risks, aggressive expansion, and an almost supernatural ability to anticipate market movements. The humanitarian mission was real, he genuinely wanted to change the world, but he'd learned early that good intentions without power were worthless. And Evelyn Reed represented everything that stood in his way. Pull up every project we've kept compartmentalized from those 2, Alex said. I want to know exactly what Reed knows and what she only thinks she knows. And Jennifer, upgrade our NDA enforcement. If they've violated their agreements, I want legal action initiated by Monday. Already drafted, Jennifer confirmed. Good. Alex turned back to face his team. Now, let's talk about what Evelyn Reed doesn't know. The following morning, the financial news networks exploded with a story that sent both companies' stock prices into chaos. Meridian Health Systems, a mid-sized healthcare AI company that both Reed Technologies and Thorne Industries had been circling for months, had received a hostile takeover bid from an unexpected source, Kaufman Digital, a European conglomerate with deep pockets and questionable ethics. Evelyn watched the coverage from her office, her expression unreadable. Vincent stood beside her, arms crossed. If Kaufman acquires Meridian, they'll have access to patient data infrastructure across 47 hospital networks, he said. Combined with their existing platforms, they become the 3rd major player in healthcare AI, Evelyn finished. Unacceptable. We could counterbid, but the resources required would leave us vulnerable on other fronts. Reed Technologies doesn't overextend. It was one of her cardinal rules, the lesson learned from her father's collapse. But we also don't allow threats to establish themselves. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pause. Evelyn Reed. We have a problem. The voice was instantly recognizable, smooth, confident, with an undercurrent of barely contained intensity. Alexander Thorne. I don't recall giving you my private number. You didn't. I'm resourceful. Are you watching the Meridian situation? I don't discuss competitive intelligence with rivals, Mr. Thorne. Not even when those rivals might be temporary allies. There was something different in his tone. Not the public charm, but something sharper, more genuine. Kaufman acquiring Meridian is bad for both of us. You know it, I know it. What you might not know is that Kaufman has backing from the Volkov Group. Evelyn's fingers tightened on the phone. The Volkov Group, Russian oligarchs with a reputation for corporate warfare that made her own tactics look gentle. How reliable is your intelligence? Extremely. I have documentation. Financial trails that should concern both of us. He paused. Meet with me. Tomorrow, neutral ground. Just you and me, off the record. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. Alexander Thorne was dangerous, not because he was cruel, but because he was effective. Charming enough to make people trust him, ruthless enough to exploit that trust. Meeting him alone would be walking into a tiger's den. But the Volkov Group changed the equation. If they established a foothold in American healthcare AI through Kaufman. The Renwick Hotel, she said. Downtown. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Suite 2847, I'll book it under a corporate shell. You come alone, I come alone. Any deviation and this conversation never happened. Agreed. Was that respect in his voice? Or amusement? I look forward to finally meeting the Ice Queen in person. Mr. Thorne, if you're planning to waste my time with charm and flattery, I should warn you, I'm immune to both. His laugh was low and genuine. Ms. Reed, I wouldn't dream of it. Besides, the smile was audible in his voice. I've always preferred fire to ice anyway. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone, a strange sensation flickering through her chest. Not anxiety, she'd trained herself past such weaknesses. But something else. Anticipation, perhaps. The feeling of a chess player finally sitting down across from a worthy opponent. Problem? Vincent asked, noting her expression. Quite possibly. She set down the phone. Clear my schedule tomorrow evening. And Vincent, tell no one about this. Not the board, not legal, not anyone. What's happening tomorrow evening? Evelyn turned back to the windows. Either the biggest mistake of my career, she said softly, or the beginning of a very different game. If you're still watching, kindly let us know where you are watching us from in the comments. The next evening arrived with the weight of significance. Evelyn chose her armor carefully, a charcoal suit that spoke of power without ostentation, her dark hair pulled back in a severe twist, minimal jewelry, just the platinum watch her mother had given her before the cancer took her, back when Evelyn was still young enough to believe that good people were rewarded and evil was punished. She'd learned better. The world rewarded the strong and devoured the weak, and morality was a luxury afforded only to those with enough power to protect themselves. The Renwick was the kind of hotel where discretion was as expensive as the rooms. She'd chosen it precisely because its clientele valued privacy above all else, celebrities hiding affairs, executives conducting negotiations that would never appear in official minutes, politicians making deals that would horrify their constituents. Suite 2847 was elegant and impersonal. Evelyn arrived 15 minutes early, sweeping the room with practiced efficiency, checking for recording devices, scanning the angles. Clean. She positioned herself in the chair that commanded the best view of the door, her tablet at hand, her phone displaying the real-time stock positions of both their companies. At precisely 7 p.m., someone knocked. She opened the door, and for the first time in 5 years of corporate warfare, came face to face with Alexander Thorne. The photographs didn't do him justice, which irritated her. He was taller than she'd expected, maybe 6'2" to her 5'9", with the kind of physical presence that came from genuine athleticism rather than expensive trainers. He wore dark jeans and a gray sweater, and those green eyes that had charmed 1,000 investors fixed on her with an intensity that was almost physical. Ms. Reed. He extended his hand. Alexander Thorne. Though I suspect you've spent enough time analyzing my company to feel like we've already met. His handshake was firm, confident, the grip of someone used to taking what he wanted. Evelyn matched it precisely, neither yielding nor dominating. Mr. Thorne. You have 15 minutes to convince me this meeting wasn't a waste of time. Straight to business. I like it. He moved into the suite with the easy confidence of someone comfortable anywhere. No pretense of civility, no small talk about the weather or the view. It's refreshing. I'm rarely described as refreshing. Ice Queen is the usual phrase, I believe. Media laziness. He settled into the chair opposite hers, close enough that she could detect his cologne, something expensive and understated. You're not cold, Ms. Reed. You're focused. There's a difference. Flattery already, Mr. Thorne. I warned you. Not flattery. Observation. His eyes held hers, and she was surprised to find genuine interest there rather than manipulation. I've studied you for years. Your acquisition strategy, your patent filing patterns, the way you structure your board votes. You're not cruel for cruelty's sake. You're protective. Everything you do is designed to protect what you've built. It was uncomfortably perceptive. Evelyn kept her expression neutral. And you? The disruptor with a conscience, is that media laziness too? Partially. A shadow crossed his face, quickly masked. I do want to change the world. I also want to win. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, despite what people seem to think. Which brings us to why we're here. Evelyn pulled up a document on her tablet. The Volkov Group. Show me your evidence. Alex produced his own tablet, turning it toward her. Financial records spilled across the screen, shell companies, laundered investments, complex ownership structures that wound through 3 continents. But the pattern was clear. The Volkov Group, through multiple proxies, had funded 80% of Kaufman Digital's expansion over the past 18 months. If they take Meridian, Alex said quietly, they'll control patient data for millions of Americans. Combined with Kaufman's existing AI platforms and the Volkov Group's, let's call them flexible ethics, we're looking at potential surveillance infrastructure that makes current privacy concerns look quaint. Evelyn studied the documents, her mind racing through implications. You're suggesting a counterbid. I'm suggesting a partnership. Temporary, strategic, and extremely lucrative if we do it right. Reed Technologies doesn't partner. We acquire or we compete. Even when the alternative is losing to something far worse. Alex leaned forward, his intensity palpable. Look, I know what you think of me. Reckless disruptor, all flash and charm, probably can't be trusted past next quarter's earnings. And I know what I think of you, ruthless, calculating, probably has ice water in her veins instead of blood. That's reasonably accurate, Evelyn said dryly. His laugh was surprised and genuine. The point is, we can hate each other on our own time. Right now, we have a common enemy. Kaufman's bid is $63 per share. Combined, we could offer 75 and split Meridian's assets according to a pre-negotiated framework. You get their East Coast infrastructure, I take West Coast, we jointly control the IP and prevent it from falling into Volkov's hands. And in the process, we'd have to reveal proprietary technology to each other, trust each other with sensitive strategic information, and put aside 5 years of direct competition. Evelyn shook her head. The risks are significant, Alex finished. So are the risks of doing nothing. Evelyn, he used her first name deliberately, testing boundaries. You're brilliant. Probably smarter than me if we're being honest. You've built something extraordinary through sheer will and intelligence. But you've also built walls so high that you can't see threats coming from unexpected directions. And you? The man who teaches AI to save lives while stealing my employees. What walls have you built, Alexander? The use of his full name made him smile. Enough to survive. Not so many that I can't adapt when the situation demands it. He stood, moving to the window. I lost my mother to a misdiagnosis that AI could have caught. I was 14. For 3 months, everyone told her it was nothing, just stress, just age, just bad luck. By the time they figured out it was cancer, it was too late. Evelyn hadn't expected vulnerability. It threw her off balance in a way that pure aggression never could. "That's why you focus on healthcare AI," she said quietly. "That's why I focus on getting it right. On making sure the technology actually helps people instead of just making rich investors richer." He turned back to face her. "I know you think profit and purpose can't coexist. But I'm living proof they can. I think," Evelyn said carefully, "that purpose without profit is charity. And charity depends on the goodwill of others. I prefer to control my own fate. Then control this situation. Partner with me, just this once. We take down Kaufman, protect millions of patients from Volkov surveillance, and in the process, maybe learn we're not as different as we thought." He was good. Dangerously good. Every word calculated to appeal to logic while subtly undermining her defenses. Evelyn recognized the technique because she used it herself. But he was also right. 48 hours, she said. "I'll need comprehensive due diligence on your financials, your Meridian strategy, and a framework agreement drafted by both our legal teams. If I see anything, and I mean anything, that suggests you're using this as a Trojan horse to access Reed Technologies' IP, you'll destroy me with the same efficiency you use to destroy everyone else." "I'm aware." Alex moved back to his chair. "I'll have everything to you by noon tomorrow. In return, I need the same transparency from Reed Technologies." "Fine." "But Alexander," she held his gaze. "If you betray me, I won't just destroy your company. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I'll tie up every patent you hold in litigation for decades. I'll turn your name into a cautionary tale." Instead of being intimidated, he smiled, that dangerous, genuine smile that had probably charmed 1,000 people into decisions they later regretted. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I wouldn't expect anything less." The due diligence process was warfare conducted through spreadsheets and legal documents. For 3 days, teams of lawyers, accountants, and strategic analysts from both companies worked around the clock, combing through financials, intellectual property portfolios, and operational structures with the intensity of archaeologists searching for landmines. Evelyn had expected obstacles. What she hadn't expected was how efficiently Alexander Thorne's team operated. Every document arrived precisely on schedule. Every question received comprehensive answers within hours. The transparency was almost unsettling, like watching someone willingly expose their throat to a predator. "It's too clean," Vincent said on the 4th day, reviewing the latest batch of Thorne Industries financial reports in Evelyn's office. "Nobody's books look this good without creative accounting. I've had forensic accountants review every line. It's legitimate." Evelyn stared at her screen, where a video conference with Alexander was scheduled to begin in 2 minutes. "He's either genuinely committed to this partnership, or he's playing a longer game than I anticipated. Which possibility concerns you more?" Evelyn considered the question. "I'm not sure yet." The video call connected precisely at 2 p.m. Alexander appeared on screen from what looked like his Seattle office, the Space Needle visible through the window behind him. He'd clearly been working for hours. His hair was more disheveled than usual, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened in a way that shouldn't have been distracting but somehow was. "Evelyn, your team's questions are thorough. I think I now know more about my own company's procurement system than I did last week. Knowledge is never wasted, Mr. Thorne. Speaking of which, your R&D projections for the Phoenix Initiative. The timeline seems aggressive." "It is aggressive. It's also achievable." He leaned forward, and even through the screen, his intensity was palpable. I assume your analysts have already figured out what Phoenix really is. An AI diagnostic system that doesn't just analyze symptoms but predicts disease progression with enough accuracy to revolutionize preventive medicine. If it works, it would make current diagnostic AI look like a calculator compared to a quantum computer. Alexander's expression shifted, surprise mixed with something that might have been respect. Most people would have needed another week to piece that together. I'm not most people. Neither are you, which is why I have a question. If Phoenix is as revolutionary as the data suggests, why risk partnering with Reed Technologies? You could take Meridian alone, integrate their infrastructure yourself, and keep Phoenix entirely proprietary. I could. I'd also spend the next 2 years in patent litigation with Reed Technologies, fighting Kaufman on one front and you on another, while the Volkov Group establishes themselves in the market I'm trying to disrupt. He paused. Sometimes the smartest play is recognizing when you need an ally, even if that ally is someone who'd normally be your fiercest competitor. Or, Evelyn countered, you've calculated that exposure to Reed Technologies' neural network architecture would accelerate Phoenix development enough to justify the risk of partnership. Also true. His smile was sharp. See? We're not so different. We both see the game behind the game. The difference is I don't pretend the game is anything other than what it is. And I don't pretend that winning is the only thing that matters. Alexander shifted, his expression growing serious. Evelyn, I've read every interview you've ever given. I know your origin story, your father's company, what happened when you were 19. I understand why you built walls so high that nothing can touch you. But those same walls also mean you can't see the difference between an enemy and someone who might actually be on your side. The presumption of it, the casual psychoanalysis, should have made her furious. Instead, Evelyn felt something else entirely. A recognition, perhaps. The uncomfortable sensation of being truly seen by someone who had no right to see her at all. You don't know me, Mr. Thorne. Don't I? You wake up at 5 a.m. every day. You haven't taken a vacation in 6 years. You attend every board meeting in person, never by video, because you learned early that presence equals power. You drink your coffee black because adding anything feels like weakness. You. Enough. Her voice was ice, but something flickered beneath it. This partnership is professional. My personal life is not up for discussion. Fair enough. But his eyes held hers through the screen with an intensity that made the distance between Seattle and New York feel irrelevant. Though for what it's worth, I think the person behind the Ice Queen mask might be more interesting than the myth. Before Evelyn could formulate a response that was both cutting and professional, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Reed, the Kaufman counteroffer just hit the wire. They've increased their Meridian bid to $72 per share. Alexander heard it too. They're forcing our hand. We need to move now or we lose our window. Evelyn's mind raced through calculations, stock positions, market reactions, regulatory timelines. $78 per share. Split 50-50 between our companies. We can structure it as a joint acquisition entity, dissolve it after asset division. Full proposal to Meridian's board by Monday morning. Agreed. I'll have my team draft the framework. My team drafts the framework, Evelyn interrupted. Your team reviews and approves. I don't take dictation, even from temporary allies. His laugh was surprised and genuine. God, you're exhausting. Yes. I am. Do we have an agreement or not? We have an agreement. Something in his expression shifted, became more focused. Evelyn, I need you to trust me on something. I don't trust anyone. Then I need you to take a calculated risk. We should announce this partnership in person. Joint press conference, both of us on stage. The media will lose their minds, the Ice Queen and the Disruptor, working together. It'll dominate every business channel for weeks. Which would make us both targets for increased scrutiny. It would also signal to Kaufman and the Volkov Group that they're facing a united front. More importantly, he paused, choosing words carefully. The market responds to narratives. Right now, the narrative is two rivals circling each other while a hostile foreign entity swoops in. We change that narrative to two industry leaders putting aside differences for the greater good. Stock prices for both companies will surge. The Meridian board will see stability instead of chaos. Evelyn hated that he was right. Hated even more that she'd been thinking the exact same thing but hadn't wanted to suggest it first. Friday, she said. The Princeton Club in New York. Neutral territory, prestigious enough to signal importance. We announce the joint bid, take questions for exactly 30 minutes, then separately release detailed strategic briefs to select analysts. I'll fly out Thursday night. Mr. Thorne, Alexander, the use of his first name felt strange on her tongue. If this is a trap, if you're playing me. I know. You'll destroy me. You've mentioned it several times. His smile was gentle, almost fond. But Evelyn, I'm not playing you. For once, this is exactly what it appears to be, two people who should be enemies deciding to be something else instead. The call ended. Evelyn sat in silence, staring at the blank screen where Alexander's face had been moments before. Something was happening, something that had nothing to do with corporate strategy or market advantage. Something dangerous. Vincent appeared in her doorway. The board wants an emergency meeting. They've heard rumors about the Thorne partnership. Let them wait. First, I need you to run a comprehensive background check on Alexander Thorne. Not the corporate profile, the personal history. Education, relationships, legal issues, everything. You think he's hiding something? Everyone's hiding something, Vincent. I just need to know what his something is before I walk into that press conference. The background check arrived 36 hours later, and it was disappointingly clean. Stanford undergrad, MIT for his master's in computer science, briefly engaged in his late 20s to a medical researcher who died in a car accident, no children, no scandals, no skeletons in closets waiting to emerge. But there were patterns. Donations to cancer research foundations, anonymously funded scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds studying STEM fields, a voting record on his corporate board that consistently favored employee benefits over shareholder dividends. Alexander Thorne, it seemed, genuinely believed the things he said in interviews. Which made him either a true idealist or the most dangerous kind of liar, the kind who believed his own lies. Evelyn was still reviewing the file when her phone rang. Alexander's number, but it was 11:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Ms. Reed, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I don't sleep much. What is it? We have a problem. Kaufman just released a statement claiming our partnership violates antitrust regulations. They're threatening to file a complaint with the FTC. Evelyn was already pulling up her laptop, scanning the newswires. It's a bluff. The acquisition hasn't even been finalized. They have no grounds. Except the court of public opinion doesn't care about legal technicalities. CNN is running with it. So is the Journal. The story is shifting from innovative partnership to monopolistic collusion. She could hear the frustration in his voice, the edge of something that might have been fear. Alexander Thorne, who always seemed so unshakable, was rattled. We accelerate the timeline, Evelyn said, thinking rapidly. The press conference was scheduled for Friday. We move it to tomorrow afternoon. We control the narrative before Kaufman can poison it further. Tomorrow. A pause. My team isn't ready. The talking points alone. Then stop talking to me and start preparing. I'll have a car meet you at Teterboro Airport at noon. We'll have 3 hours to coordinate before we go live. Evelyn, this is rushing into gunfire. Would you prefer to wait and let Kaufman reload? This is how you win wars, Alexander. You move faster than your enemy expects, strike before they're prepared, and never, ever let them see you hesitate. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, not defeat, but something else. Admiration, perhaps. You're right. I'll see you tomorrow. Alexander. She stopped him before he could hang up. Don't make me regret trusting you. I won't. And then, softer, I promise. Evelyn ended the call and immediately began drafting talking points, messaging strategies, potential hostile questions and their responses. By 3 a.m., she had a comprehensive battle plan. By 5 a.m., her team was assembled, reviewing the strategy. By 8 a.m., she'd personally called 12 major investors to brief them on the partnership and preempt concerns. By noon, she was standing in her office in a Navy Armani suit that communicated power without aggression, waiting for Alexander Thorne to arrive, and trying to ignore the strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the press conference. He arrived at 12:15 p.m., accompanied only by Jennifer Wu, his head of security. Evelyn had expected an entourage, lawyers, PR consultants, strategic advisors. Instead, there was just Alexander in a charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically to make him appear both trustworthy and dangerous, and Jennifer, who took one look at the conference room setup and nodded approvingly before positioning herself by the door. You came alone, Evelyn observed. So did you, essentially. Vincent is here, but he knows when to give me space. You learn quickly. I try. Alexander set down his tablet and met her eyes directly. Evelyn, before we do this, I need to know you're certain. Once we walk out on that stage together, everything changes. The market will scrutinize every interaction between our companies. Our competitors will look for any sign of weakness. The media will speculate about everything from our strategic motivations to whether we're secretly dating. The last comment should have been absurd. Instead, it hung in the air between them like a challenge. Let them speculate, Evelyn said coolly. I've been the subject of speculation my entire career. I'm not concerned about rumors. Even rumors that could affect your company's stock price. Our combined announcement will boost both companies' valuations by an estimated 7 to 12%. Whatever minor fluctuations come from media gossip will be insignificant by comparison. She moved closer, and was surprised to find herself nearly eye level with him in her heels. Unless you're concerned that you can't maintain professional boundaries. His smile was slow and dangerous. Oh, I can maintain any boundaries I choose to, Ms. Reed. The question is whether you want me to. It was pure provocation, the kind of verbal chess game Evelyn normally excelled at. But something about the way he looked at her, the subtle shift in the air between them, made her usual defenses feel inadequate. We should review the talking points, she said, stepping back and hating that it felt like retreat. They spent the next 2 hours in intense preparation. Alexander was sharp, quick, anticipating hostile questions and crafting responses that balanced transparency with strategic ambiguity. They debated phrasing, argued over emphasis, and gradually found a rhythm, Evelyn's precision complementing Alexander's adaptability, his intuition filling gaps in her logic. It was, Evelyn realized with some discomfort, the most intellectually stimulating conversation she'd had in years. The antitrust angle, Alexander said, reviewing their notes. Kaufman is going to hammer it. We need a response that's both legally sound and emotionally compelling. We emphasize innovation over consolidation. The partnership preserves competition by preventing foreign monopolization of American healthcare data. We're not eliminating a competitor, we're protecting patient privacy and American technological sovereignty. Good. But it needs a human element. People don't connect with abstractions. He thought for a moment. What if we frame it around your father's company? The hostile takeover that taught you the importance of protecting American innovation. Every muscle in Evelyn's body tensed. My father's company is not relevant to this discussion. It's completely relevant. It's your origin story, the reason you built Reed Technologies, the reason you understand what's at stake when vultures circle vulnerable companies. I don't trade on personal tragedy for public sympathy. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help people understand why this matters. Alexander's voice softened. Evelyn, you've spent your entire career hiding behind ice and efficiency. What if, just this once, you let people see the person behind the empire? The person behind the empire, Evelyn said coldly, learned that vulnerability is a weapon your enemies use against you. I'm not your enemy. Aren't you? 3 days ago, you were trying to poach my employees and undercut my patents. Now you want me to share my trauma with the world so we can improve our messaging. Alexander stood, moving around the conference table until he was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. 3 days ago, I was your competitor. Today, I'm your partner. And I'm not asking you to share trauma, I'm asking you to share purpose. There's a difference. You assume I have a purpose beyond building my company. I know you do. I've studied you, remember? Every acquisition you've made has been strategic, yes, but also protective. You don't destroy companies, you absorb them, protect their IP, often keep their leadership intact. You're not a corporate raider, Evelyn. You're a guardian with trust issues. The accuracy of it stole her breath. No one had ever seen through her strategies quite so clearly. No one had ever dared to say it to her face. Don't, she said quietly, psychoanalyze me. Then don't pretend you're something you're not. His hand moved, not quite touching her arm but close enough that she could feel the heat of it. We're about to walk out there and tell the world we're partners. The least we can do is be honest with each other. Evelyn should have moved away. Should have re-established professional distance, reminded him that their partnership was purely strategic, temporary, a means to an end. Instead, she held his gaze and said, my father trusted people. Believed that competence and innovation would be rewarded. When his company started struggling, his partners assured him they'd support restructuring. Instead, they orchestrated a hostile takeover, sold everything for parts, and left him with nothing. He died 2 years later. Heart attack, officially. But really, he died the day he realized that trust was just another word for weakness. Alexander's expression shifted, not pity, which she would have hated, but understanding. How old were you? 19. Old enough to understand exactly what had happened. Old enough to decide it would never happen to me. And it hasn't. You've built something extraordinary, Evelyn. Something your father would be proud of. My father would have hated what I've become. He believed in collaboration, in lifting everyone up together. She smiled without humor. I believe in survival. Maybe, Alexander said softly, you can believe in both. Before she could respond, Vincent appeared in the doorway. 5 minutes to air. The media room is packed, every major outlet, plus international coverage. This is going to be huge. Evelyn straightened, her mask of professional composure sliding back into place with practiced ease. Then let's give them a show. But as she walked toward the door, Alexander's voice stopped her. Evelyn. Thank you. For trusting me with that. She didn't turn around. Couldn't, because if she did, he might see something in her expression that she wasn't ready to acknowledge even to herself. Don't make me regret it, she said, and walked out to face the cameras. The media room was chaos contained by professional courtesy, cameras clicking, reporters shouting questions, the low hum of speculation that always preceded major announcements. Evelyn and Alexander entered from opposite sides of the stage, a choreographed symmetry that the cameras loved. They met at the podium, and when Alexander extended his hand for a professional handshake, Evelyn took it with the perfect amount of warmth, enough to signal partnership, not so much as to suggest friendship. The cameras went insane. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evelyn began, her voice cutting through the noise with the precision of a scalpel, "thank you for joining us on short notice. Alexander Thorne and I are here to announce a strategic partnership that we believe will reshape the healthcare AI landscape and protect American technological sovereignty." Alexander took over seamlessly. Kaufman Digital's hostile bid for Meridian Health Systems represents more than just corporate competition. Our intelligence indicates significant financial backing from foreign interests whose commitment to patient privacy and data security is, at best, questionable. Back and forth they went, a perfectly executed duet. Evelyn provided the strategic framework, the legal justifications, the market analysis. Alexander supplied the vision, the humanitarian mission, the emotional resonance that made abstract billions feel relevant to ordinary lives. And somewhere in the middle of it, something shifted. The practiced performance became something else, a genuine collaboration, two brilliant minds working in concert, anticipating each other's points, building on each other's arguments. The questions came fast and hostile. "Ms. Reed, critics say this partnership is hypocritical given Reed Technologies' own aggressive acquisition history. Reed Technologies has never compromised patient data security or sold American healthcare infrastructure to foreign entities. Our acquisition strategy prioritizes innovation protection, not exploitation." Next question. Is there truth to rumors that this partnership extends beyond business? Evelyn's expression didn't flicker. "Mr. Thorne and I met for the first time in person 4 days ago. This partnership is purely strategic and entirely professional. Speculation otherwise is precisely the kind of distraction that prevents substantive discussion of the real issues at stake." But Alexander, either braver or more reckless, added, "Though I will say, working with someone as brilliant as Ms. Reed has been illuminating. I wish we'd done this years ago." The way he said it, with that small smile, that hint of warmth, made it sound like something more than professional respect. The cameras caught it. The reporters caught it. And Evelyn, meeting his eyes for a fraction of a second too long, felt something dangerous unfold in her chest. The press conference ended exactly 30 minutes later. They'd controlled the narrative, deflected the hostile questions, and left the media with a story that would dominate the business cycle for weeks: the Ice Queen and the Disruptor, united against a common enemy. As they walked off stage, Evelyn could hear the reporters already crafting their headlines. But all she could focus on was Alexander's hand at the small of her back, a gesture so brief it might have been accidental, except for the way her entire body responded to the touch. "That went well," he said quietly as they entered the relative privacy of the backstage area. "It went according to plan." Evelyn moved away from his touch, needing distance. "Your team will coordinate with Vincent on the follow-up analyst briefings. We reconvene Monday to review Meridian's board response." Evelyn. "Mr. Thorne, our professional collaboration doesn't require personal intimacy. Thank you for your time today. Vincent will see you out." She walked away before he could respond, before she could do something stupid like acknowledge the pull she felt toward him, the dangerous recognition that somewhere in the past 4 days, Alexander Thorne had stopped being just an enemy and become something far more complicated. Behind her, she heard Jennifer Wu's quiet voice, "That went differently than you expected, didn't it?" And Alexander's response, barely audible, "Yeah. It really did." The announcement sent shockwaves through the business world exactly as predicted. By Friday evening, Reed Technologies stock had climbed 9%. Thorne Industries was up 11%. Financial analysts filled the airwaves with breathless speculation about the implications of two industry titans joining forces. The Wall Street Journal called it the most unexpected alliance since the Cold War ended. Bloomberg ran a cover story titled, "When Rivals Become Partners, The New Rules of Tech Warfare." But it was the gossip that caught fire in ways Evelyn hadn't anticipated. She discovered it Saturday morning during her usual 5 a.m. workout, when her phone began vibrating with alerts from her media monitoring service. Social media had exploded overnight with speculation about her relationship with Alexander. Hundreds of screenshots from the press conference were being analyzed frame by frame, the way they'd looked at each other, the synchronization of their movements, that moment when his hand had touched her back. Twitter was particularly active. #IceQueenandDisruptor was trending. Someone had created a compilation video set to dramatic music, cutting between moments of eye contact that looked far more intimate than Evelyn remembered them being. The comments ranged from amused to invested to uncomfortably invasive. Evelyn closed the app with more force than necessary and returned to her elliptical, pushing the resistance higher. Ridiculous. All of it. She and Alexander had conducted a professional press conference about a strategic business partnership. The fact that the media, and apparently half the internet, had decided to turn it into a romance novel was not her concern. Except it was. Because by Monday morning, she'd have to face her board, and they would definitely make it their concern. Her phone rang. Alexander, of course. "Have you seen the coverage?" he asked without preamble. "I've seen it. It's irrelevant." "Evelyn, there are memes. Memes about us. Someone made one where we're from rival kingdoms and, you know what, it doesn't matter. The point is, this narrative is spiraling beyond our control. So we ignore it. Speculation dies when you don't feed it." Normally, yes. But the Meridian board meets Tuesday to vote on the competing bids. "If they think our partnership is built on," he paused, searching for words. "Personal rather than professional foundations, it could undermine confidence in our strategic stability." Evelyn had already considered this angle. "Then we issue a joint statement Monday morning. Brief, professional, clarifying that our relationship is purely business. We don't apologize, we don't over-explain, we simply state facts and move forward." "Agreed. I'll have my PR team draft something and send it over for your approval." "My team drafts it. Yours approves." His laugh was tired but genuine. "Of course. How could I forget? The Ice Queen doesn't take dictation. The Ice Queen is also wondering why you sound exhausted. It's barely 7 a.m. in Seattle. I haven't slept. Been up since Friday night dealing with the fallout." A pause. "My board is concerned. They think I'm being reckless, letting emotion cloud judgment. Are you?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them wanted to examine too closely. "I don't know," Alexander said finally, and the honesty in his voice was almost painful. "This partnership makes perfect strategic sense. But somewhere between the due diligence and the press conference, it started feeling like something more than strategy." Evelyn's grip tightened on her phone. "Then you need to remember what this is. A temporary alliance against a common threat. When Meridian is secure and Kaufman is defeated, we return to being competitors." "Do we?" His voice was soft. "Evelyn, that press conference, working with you instead of against you, it was exhilarating. Imagine what we could build if we stopped fighting each other and started fighting the same battles. I've built everything I have alone. I don't need partners. Maybe you don't need them. But that doesn't mean you couldn't benefit from one. That doesn't mean," he stopped himself. "I should let you go." Monday morning, joint statement, back to professional boundaries. "I understand." He ended the call before she could respond, leaving Evelyn alone in her apartment with the uncomfortable realization that some part of her had wanted him to push back, to challenge her walls the way he'd been doing all week. Dangerous. This was all becoming far too dangerous. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. The joint statement went out at 9 a.m. sharp, 2 paragraphs of carefully worded clarification that their partnership was strategic, professional, and focused entirely on protecting American healthcare infrastructure. The media barely acknowledged it. The speculation continued unabated. By 10 a.m., Evelyn was facing her board in the Reed Technologies conference room, where 12 of the most powerful investors in tech sat in judgment of her decisions. Robert Hastings, the board chairman and one of her earliest investors, led the interrogation. "Evelyn, we've supported your aggressive expansion strategy for years because it's been phenomenally successful. But this partnership with Thorne Industries represents a departure from your established approach. We need to understand your reasoning." "The reasoning is straightforward," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. "Kaufman Digital, backed by the Volkov Group, represents a threat not just to our market position but to American data security. A joint bid with Thorne Industries gives us the resources to counter that threat while minimizing individual risk exposure." "And the personal element?" This from Sarah Kwan, who'd made billions in private equity and had a reputation for cutting through pretense. "The media coverage suggests your relationship with Alexander Thorne extends beyond professional collaboration." "The media coverage is speculation based on clickbait narratives. My relationship with Mr. Thorne is purely professional." "Is it?" Sarah pulled up a tablet, turning it to show the now infamous screenshot of Alexander's hand at Evelyn's back. "Body language experts are having a field day with images from the press conference." "Body language experts," Evelyn said coldly, "are not relevant to strategic business decisions. I've provided comprehensive analysis of the Meridian acquisition's benefits to Reed Technologies. If this board is more concerned with tabloid speculation than market position, then I've seriously overestimated your sophistication." The room went silent. It was a dangerous play, calling out the board's focus, but Evelyn had learned long ago that the best defense was controlled aggression. Robert cleared his throat. "No one is questioning your strategic acumen, Evelyn. But we are concerned about potential complications. If your judgment regarding Alexander Thorne is compromised." "My judgment," Evelyn interrupted, "has generated $47 billion in shareholder value over the past decade. It has navigated Reed Technologies through 2 market crashes, countless competitive threats, and regulatory challenges that destroyed companies twice our size. I have never, not once, allowed personal feelings to interfere with business decisions. I'm not about to start now." Vincent, sitting to her right, added quietly, "The partnership has already yielded measurable results. Both companies' stock prices are up. The Meridian board is taking the joint bid seriously where they dismissed individual approaches. And preliminary analysis suggests the combined entity would control 43% of healthcare AI infrastructure, a dominant position that would take years to achieve through organic growth." The board members exchanged glances. Finally, Robert nodded. "We'll approve the partnership on a provisional basis. But Evelyn, we'll be watching closely. Any indication that this alliance is compromising Reed Technologies' interests, and we'll revisit this decision." It was as close to victory as she was going to get. Evelyn nodded once, collected her materials, and left the conference room with her head high and her heart pounding. In the elevator, Vincent said, "That was risky. It was necessary. They needed to be reminded who built this company. They also needed to be reassured that you're not." He trailed off, diplomatic as always. "Not what?" "Not falling for Alexander Thorne. Not letting attraction cloud my judgment." Evelyn laughed without humor. "I'm not, Vincent. I'm doing exactly what I've always done, protecting Reed Technologies by any means necessary. Even if those means include working with someone you're clearly." "Don't." The word was sharp. "Don't finish that sentence. Don't speculate about things that don't exist." Vincent studied her for a long moment. "I've known you for 8 years, Evelyn. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you looked at Alexander Thorne during that press conference. The elevator doors opened, saving her from having to respond. But as she walked back to her office, Evelyn couldn't shake the truth in Vincent's observation, or the fear that came with it. 3,000 miles away, Alexander was having a similar conversation with his own board, though the tone was distinctly different. "You're playing with fire," Raymond Park said bluntly. The CTO had known Alexander since Stanford and had never been one for diplomatic phrasing. "Evelyn Reed is brilliant, yes. Gorgeous, absolutely. Also completely ruthless and probably incapable of genuine human connection." "That's not fair," Alexander shot back. "You don't know her. Neither do you. You've spent a total of maybe 10 hours in her presence, and suddenly you're describing this partnership like it's some kind of destiny." Raymond leaned forward. "Alex, I love you like a brother, and I've supported every crazy idea you've ever had. But this? This feels different. It feels personal. It is personal. Everything I do is personal. That's the whole point. I'm not like Evelyn. I don't separate business from humanity. Which is exactly why she's dangerous to you." Jennifer Wu spoke from her position by the door. "You see the person behind the ice. You want to save her, fix her, show her there's another way. But Alex, some people don't want to be saved. Some people built their walls for good reasons and get furious when you try to tear them down." Alexander stood, pacing to the window. Seattle stretched below, less sharp than Manhattan but no less ambitious. What if you're all wrong? What if she's not cold, just protected? What if all she needs is someone willing to see past the armor? Then you're talking about a relationship, not a business partnership, Raymond said quietly. And relationships with people like Evelyn Reed tend to end one of two ways: either she destroys you, or you destroy each other trying to prove you're immune to destruction. I'm not afraid of Evelyn. That's the problem. Jennifer moved closer. You should be. Not because she's cruel, but because she's a survivor. And survivors do whatever it takes to protect themselves, even if it means sacrificing the people who care about them. Alexander wanted to argue. Wanted to defend Evelyn, to insist they were all wrong about her. But he'd seen the way she'd walked away after the press conference, the deliberate distance, the refusal to acknowledge what had clearly passed between them on that stage. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was playing with fire. His phone rang. A text from an unknown number: "My board meeting went poorly. Yours?" Despite everything, Alexander smiled. "About the same. They think I'm being reckless." "Are you?" He stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "Probably." "You?" The response took nearly 5 minutes. "I don't do reckless. I do calculated risk. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, this partnership feels pretty reckless for both of us." Another long pause. Then, "The Meridian board votes tomorrow. We should coordinate messaging." Translation: Stop talking about feelings, focus on business. Alexander got the message. Agreed. Video call at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Fine. But then, just as he was putting his phone away, one more message arrived, and Alexander. "My board isn't wrong. This is risky. Just make sure you know what you're risking." The video call that evening was all business, reviewing Meridian's board composition, analyzing the likely vote breakdown, strategizing responses to potential objections. They spoke for 90 minutes without once acknowledging the personal tension that hummed beneath every interaction. When they finally ended the call, Evelyn sat alone in her darkening office, watching the city lights flicker to life below. Somewhere across the country, Alexander was probably doing the same thing. Two powerful people, alone in their towers, pretending they weren't both wondering what might happen if they stopped pretending. Her phone rang. Not Alexander this time, her mother's sister, Aunt Claire, one of the few family members Evelyn maintained contact with. "I saw the press conference," Claire said without preamble. "He's handsome. Charming. Seems smart. Aunt Claire. Your mother would have liked him. She always wanted you to find someone who could match you intellectually. This is a business partnership. Nothing more. Evelyn, darling, I've known you since you were in diapers. I remember when you used to believe in love, in trust, in all those soft things you've convinced yourself don't exist. I grew up. I learned better. You got hurt. There's a difference." Claire's voice softened. "Your father's destruction nearly destroyed you too. I understand why you built walls. But sweetheart, at some point, you have to ask yourself if you're protecting your empire or just hiding from life." "I'm not hiding. I'm surviving." "Is that really all you want? Survival? Because from where I'm sitting, you've done more than survive. You've conquered. You've built something extraordinary. Maybe it's time to ask what comes after conquest." Evelyn ended the call gently but firmly, unwilling to continue a conversation that hit too close to truths she wasn't ready to examine. But Claire's words lingered, mixing with the memory of Alexander's voice. "Imagine what we could build if we stopped fighting each other." Tuesday morning dawned gray and cold. The Meridian Health Systems Board was meeting at 2 p.m. By 3 p.m., the business world would know whether the joint bid had succeeded, and what that meant for the future of the partnership. Evelyn spent the morning in meetings, reviewing quarterly projections, analyzing patent applications, doing all the normal work of running a $45 billion empire. But her attention kept drifting to the clock. At 1:47 p.m., her phone rang. "Alexander. Whatever happens today," he said, "I want you to know this partnership, working with you instead of against you, has been the most interesting professional experience of my career." "Professional," Evelyn repeated. "Is that really what this is?" Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "I don't know anymore." "Is it for you?" Before Evelyn could answer, before she could decide what answer she even wanted to give, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Reed, I have David Core from Meridian's board on line 2. He says it's urgent." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "I have to take this. Alexander." "I know. Call me after." She switched lines. "David, this is Evelyn Reed." "Ms. Reed." David Core's voice was professionally neutral, which told her exactly nothing. "The board has completed our deliberations regarding the acquisition offers. And we'd like to invite you and Mr. Thorne to Boston tomorrow for final negotiations. The board is prepared to accept your joint bid, pending resolution of several structural concerns." Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by the familiar rush of victory. "We'll be there." "What time?" 9 a.m. "And Ms. Reed?" "I should mention, the vote was unanimous. Your partnership made the decision easy. Whatever else the media wants to speculate about, your professional collaboration clearly works." The call ended. Evelyn immediately dialed Alexander. "We won," she said when he answered. "Meridian accepted the joint bid. Final negotiations tomorrow in Boston." His laugh was pure joy. "We actually did it. We beat Kaufman. We beat everyone." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn smiled, not the professional curve she used in board meetings, but a genuine expression of triumph. "Alexander, this is going to change everything. The market position alone." "Forget the market position for a second. Evelyn, we just accomplished something neither of us could have done alone. Doesn't that tell you something?" It tells me that strategic partnerships can be effective when properly structured. It tells me, Alexander said softly, that maybe we're better together than we are apart. The words hung between them, heavy with implications that extended far beyond corporate strategy. I need to brief my team, Evelyn said, retreating to safer ground. We'll coordinate travel arrangements for tomorrow. Evelyn, wait. Congratulations, Mr. Thorne. This is a significant victory for both our companies. She ended the call before he could push further, before she had to acknowledge that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Alexander Thorne had stopped being just a rival or even a partner and had become something she had no framework for handling. The Boston negotiations were scheduled for 9 a.m., but Evelyn's flight landed at 7:30 a.m., giving her time to review final strategy points before the meeting. She'd expected to make the trip alone or with Vincent. What she hadn't expected was to walk into the private terminal and find Alexander already there, looking unfairly alert despite the early hour. "We're on the same flight," he said, gesturing to the sleek private jet on the tarmac. "I hope you don't mind. My team coordinated with Vincent. Seemed more efficient than taking separate planes." "Efficiency is always preferable," she said. The flight was just over an hour, but in the intimate confines of the private jet, it felt both longer and shorter than it should have. They reviewed negotiation strategy, discussed structural frameworks for the asset split, analyzed potential regulatory hurdles. All perfectly professional. Except for the moments when their hands brushed reaching for the same document. When their eyes met and held a fraction too long. When the conversation lapsed into silence that felt charged rather than awkward. "Can I ask you something?" Alexander said as they began their descent into Boston. "And I want you to answer honestly, not professionally." "I'm always honest." "You're always strategic." "It's not the same thing." He set down his tablet, giving her his full attention. "That first night at the Renwick, when I told you about my mother, you looked surprised." "Why?" Evelyn considered deflecting. But something about the altitude, the isolation of being 30,000 feet above the world they'd built, made honesty feel less dangerous than usual. Because vulnerability is a weapon. Everyone knows that. But you just offered it. No calculation, no strategy. Just truth. Did it make you trust me less? It should have. Instead, she stopped herself, but Alexander leaned forward. "Instead what?" "Instead it made me wonder what it would be like to be that unguarded. To not calculate every word, every gesture, every interaction. You could try it sometime. With me, I mean. I promise not to use your secrets as weapons. Everyone says that. Until they need leverage. I'm not everyone." His hand moved to cover hers, warm and steady. "Evelyn, I know you don't trust easily. I know you've been hurt and betrayed and you've learned to protect yourself by keeping everyone at arm's length. But what if, just for the duration of this partnership, you tried trusting me? Not as a business associate. As a person." Evelyn looked down at their joined hands. Every instinct screamed at her to pull away, to re-establish boundaries, to remember that trust was just another word for vulnerability. But the warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his eyes, made her want things she'd long ago decided were impossible. "I don't know how," she admitted quietly. "Then I'll teach you. Same way you're teaching me to be more strategic, I'll teach you to be less guarded." His smile was gentle. "Fair trade." The plane touched down before she could answer, jarring them both back to reality. But as they gathered their things and prepared to face the Meridian board, Alexander kept his hand at the small of her back, that same gesture from the press conference, but this time, Evelyn didn't pull away. The negotiations were complex, technical, and ultimately successful. By noon, they'd hammered out a framework agreement that gave Reed Technologies control of East Coast infrastructure, Thorn Industries the West Coast, and established joint oversight of intellectual property. Meridian's board was satisfied. Kaufman Digital was defeated. As they left the conference room, David Corr pulled Evelyn aside. "Off the record," he said quietly. "I've been in this business 30 years. I've seen a lot of partnerships, strategic alliances, hostile mergers, corporate marriages of convenience. What you and Thorn have, that's different. That's the kind of partnership that either transforms an industry or implodes spectacularly. Sometimes both. Which do you think it'll be?" Evelyn asked. David smiled. "I think that depends on whether you're brave enough to let it be something real instead of just strategic." On the flight back to New York, the euphoria of victory slowly gave way to something more complicated. They'd won. They'd achieved what they'd set out to do. Which meant the partnership, at least in its current form, was coming to an end. "So what happens now?" Alexander asked, echoing her thoughts. "We've secured Meridian. Kaufman is out of the picture. The asset division is structured. We could dissolve the partnership entity by end of quarter." "We could," Evelyn agreed. "Return to business as usual. Resume competitive positions. Is that what you want?" It was the question she'd been avoiding for days. The rational answer was yes, they'd served their purpose, achieved their goal, and now should return to their separate empires. But rational had stopped feeling sufficient somewhere around the time Alexander Thorn had walked into her life and started challenging every assumption she'd built her empire on. "I don't know," she said finally. "What I want and what's strategic aren't always the same thing. Maybe they don't have to be mutually exclusive." Alexander turned to face her fully. "Evelyn, I know this is terrifying for you. Trust me, it's terrifying for me too. But I can't stop thinking about what we could build if we stopped fighting each other. Not a temporary alliance, a real partnership. Reed Technologies and Thorn Industries, working together instead of in competition. That's impossible. The market dynamics alone are complicated, yes. But not impossible. We'd have to restructure, establish clear boundaries, probably face regulatory scrutiny." "But Evelyn," his voice dropped, became more intimate. "I'm not just talking about the companies anymore." There it was. The truth they'd been dancing around for 2 weeks, spoken aloud in the quiet cabin of a private jet 30,000 feet above reality. "Alexander. I know. You don't do relationships. You don't trust people. You've built your entire life around never being vulnerable. I'm not asking you to tear down all your walls overnight. I'm just asking," he took her hand again. "Give me a chance to prove that not everyone is out to destroy you. That sometimes, the risky play is the right one." Evelyn's phone rang. Multiple alerts from her media monitoring service. With a sense of dread, she pulled it up. The headlines were everywhere: Thorn and Reed, more than business. Source claims partnership has become personal. Are tech's biggest rivals actually falling in love? And there, on page 6 of all places, a photo taken through the window of the private jet, her and Alexander, hands intertwined, looking at each other with expressions that were impossible to describe as merely professional. End of Part 1. Part 2 coming in shortly.